Hello, good evening. Gary Gedall, psychologist, psychotherapist. Tonight is Thursday evening, the fourth day of our little challenge of 70 days. And appreciate that you're there. I'll just do this. That way, if you are here, you can message me and I can see you're here and we can participate together. So, as usual, I'll speak a little bit of my day. Today is Thursday. We had our meeting of our little clinic. We shared out a few new patients. I saw a few patients today, well, quite a lot of patients today. Carried on working on my YouTube production of Who is Meghan Markle, which you will see hopefully quite soon, quite shortly. Keep watching this. And so carried on with that a bit. Hopefully, maybe even by the weekend, I have something to show. We'll see. I don't know. I'm about to start working on the visuals. This is like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe even more of material. Is that making interesting visuals for all of that is definitely going to take some time. I don't know how long time it's going to take, but when you consider most visuals are about 10 seconds each, that's 6 for a minute. 2 hours is 120. That's like nearly 1,000 images. So I don't think I'm going to do all that, but just the same, it's going to take a bit of time. So today, I had a very interesting discussion with my patients about pardon. She has problems. This has happened in her past, and she's read on the YouTube, on the internet, that when you pardon someone, you start to feel better. And she said, should I pardon these people? And I said, no, do not pardon these people. And we had a long discussion about it. So I thought it'd be interesting to discuss this with you on this question of pardoning other people, forgiveness. Now, there is a lot of material from all different sides that talk about the benefit of pardoning other people. So, before I start to explain why not, I'm going to go through all the different concepts of why you should. And then we're going to look and see why it doesn't work, why it doesn't function, why in most circumstances it's not the way to go forward. Start off with obviously a Christian theology that says that forgiveness is central and God forgives people's sins. And Christ sacrificed himself for your sins, which seems to be a very vague idea. An idea that for some vague concept of God and goodness and right, you need to forgive people of what they've done wrong. Just like that. So if someone comes up to you and robs you and beats you with a stick, then you're supposed to go and forgive them. This whole concept of turning the other cheek. You know, someone strikes you, turn the other cheek. Why? To give them a new target, something else to hit, another way to you abuse you. Sorry, it's a bit. It doesn't work with me, honestly. Forgiveness is often portrayed as releasing condemnation. You restore your relationship with God and with yourself from emptying yourself from bitterness. Now, I am open to the concept of God. I have quite a lot of my patients that are religious on many different religions, and I totally support them on their religious approach. Fortunately, none of them has an aggressive and destructive religious approach against any other religion. They're all quite reasonable human beings. So following their religion is something positive which I support. And I understand that your relationship with God is another way of expressing your relationship with your higher self or your inner self. And if you're in inner conflict, should I forgive? Should I not forgive? Should I attack? Should I retreat? Should I be a bully? Should I be a victim? If you're in the middle of all these inner conflicts of not knowing what to do, you're not in harmony with yourself. You're not well in your skin. And finding a solution that you can be coherent with, of course, is an excellent idea. But for me, sort of carte blanche forgiveness is not that. They talk about forgiveness being part of reconciliation. And we'll go further than that. We'll have a look at some of the family therapists that talk about family reconciliation. But just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you'll have reconciliation. It doesn't mean that they're willing to be your friend, your ally, your supporter, because you just don't attack them. So somebody, as I say, that beats you with a stick and steals your money, if you say, I'm not going to go to the police, I'm not going to attack you in justice, he's not going to be your best friend. You're going to say, that's an easy mark. Maybe I'll come back next time I need some money. That's my belief. So we'll go away from that because I find it a bit frustrating. So, positive psychology and the therapeutic approaches. So we now talk to psychologists, and there's a psychologist called Robert Enright. It sounds very English, but he wants a structured model with different phases. Sounds very American to me, honestly. And you need to uncover pain, decision, work, outcome. And it aims to help clients to heal from grievances by releasing resentment and integrating compassion for themselves and for others. But compassion for the guy who beat you with a stick and stole your money, I'm sorry, it still doesn't work. Yes, if you see somebody that hurt you as an expression of their own pain, of their own suffering, then maybe you can have compassion for them. But we'll go forward. I mean, later on, I will give you the menu, the system of how it's possible to forgive someone. But it needs to be interactive with them, and they need to be party to it. It's really important. So he says it's not about denying harm or condoning wrongdoing or trivializing, making less big trauma. So it's not like that. But it's difficult for me to reconcile the idea of forgiving someone and still having all those negative feelings. And to remove those negative feelings without feeling some justice, some fairness, for me, doesn't really work. And it says it helps with mediating effects, making you feel better. It reduces anger, increases hope, etc., etc. I'm sorry. I think it's bullshit. I don't think it's helpful at all. So there is this forgiveness theory. In psychology, it distinguishes between decisional forgiveness and emotional forgiveness. Now this I find interesting because it shows one of the huge problems in all these theories and with all these practices, because you get the idea in your mind, you hear it, you start to believe it, you don't feel it. You don't feel you want to forgive. And if you forgive with your mouth, with your acts, and you don't feel it, then you're in a conflict. And then you're going to feel worse. I promise you, because inner conflict is one of the main reasons people come to psychotherapy. Often because they're not aware that they're in a conflict, or if they are, they don't see any way to get through it. So doing something that creates even more inner conflict, sorry, I'm not into that. Now, it talks about self-forgiveness. Now, that's something else. But self-forgiveness also needs to follow a certain pattern to make sense. And the pattern, as I say, of the 4 steps to being pardoned, it also works to some degree with yourself. So let's go to the Eastern religions, the Hindu and the Buddhist concept. In Hinduism, the idea of kshama is a virtue of forgiveness and forbearance. It means letting go of anger and resentment towards those that you harmed you. Well, sorry. It's okay if you live in a spiritual world. It's okay if you're so far above everything that's happening that nothing touches you. That's fine. But in this real world, if somebody harms you, they harm you. And that can have negative repercussions for you. And just to let it pass is actually giving them a green light to continue. They say that forgiveness is tied to spiritual growth and non-violence and the purification of the soul. Of course it is. If you can do that, if you can get there, that's wonderful. If really, in your heart of heart, in the depth of your being, you can look at a person that has harmed you or wronged you and say, it's not their fault. They are miserable creatures lower down on the spiritual path. And it's not worth to be upset by them. If you could do that, that's wonderful. But it's rare. There's not many of, I wouldn't say us, because I'm certainly not there. There's not many people in the universe that can do that. So now we go to family therapy. I know I'm talking an awful lot about people's ideas of how it can work and how it should work and how it's useful and positive and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is, unless we can debunk so much of what you're seeing on the internet, on YouTube, what you're reading in psychology books, spiritual books, I'm sorry, unless we can actually give you a counter argument, at least a warning that if you try and follow these steps because you believe that it's true, but you don't feel it, you're not in harmony with it, I promise you, it will make you feel better. It'll just make you feel more sick. It'll make you even confused because you think that the right thing to do is to forgive and forget and let it pass and go above. And yet you're not doing it. So then you become even more of a failure. You become a victim to your own belief system, a victim to an idea of what you should be doing, how things could be. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't work like that. So, family therapy, relational and psychodynamic perspectives. And of course, family therapy, relational and psychodynamic are all different psychological approaches. They're not the same at all. They don't fit together, but they'll come under therapy, psychotherapy. So it's good for that. So in family therapy, so it's suggested that forgiveness is sometimes seen as a relational ethic, restoring trust, repairing bonds, and enabling healthier relational dynamics. Yes, if the member of your family acknowledges, and we'll come to this again, I'll say later, that there has been a problem, and they try and do things to repair. If they make steps to repair the bonds, if they make steps to help the relationship, if they are willing to move towards you, then your forgiveness, that can be necessary. It's family, it's okay, I'll let it pass because it's family and because you have asked me to. Not because the rest of the family have asked, but you, the perpetrator, the wrongdoer, the person that's made these errors, because you have asked, then I will be willing to consider forgiveness. Now that is a totally different kettle of fish from just forgiving someone because you believe somewhere it's the right thing to do, or because often other members of the family pressure you to forgive someone because they don't want a conflict and they're maybe a little bit under the thumb of the other person, so they support them being basically an abuser, or a female abuser. In French, it's an abuseuse. So, family therapy, family dynamics, excusing, letting it pass. Sorry. Only if the other one comes forward themselves and asks you to. And if they ask you to, and they ask correctly, and they pass the 4 steps or the 5 steps that I'm going to mention later on. You see, I'm keeping you excited and keeping you interested to see what's going to happen later on because I keep talking about it. So, there's someone called Hargreave who had a forgiveness theory, again in family therapy, and he speaks of exoneration and behavior. Nice long words. But he says the offender must take responsibility and the victim can choose to release the demand or the resentment. And this taking responsibility will come to later because it's one of the 4 steps of forgiveness or having forgiveness. So now the psychodynamic or integrative perspective often views forgiveness as a reworking of internal representations. It's complicated what I'm doing, you realize. I'm reading it on another computer, I'm clicking things to go page by page, and I'm walking at 4 kilometers an hour, which is 4 divided by 8 is a half, 2.5 miles an hour. That's the speed that I'm going, because I think it's a challenge. I can promise you it's a challenge, but it's part of my 70-day challenge. And my 70-day challenge says I need to walk because sooner or later I'm going to be doing a 10 kilometer, which is, I don't know, I'll work it out. Well, they're like about 7.5 miles or something like that. So that's my plan. Anyway, so psychodynamic is a way of reworking our internal representations, projecting less negative attributes onto the offender. This idea that it's a projection, that it's not real, it's just what you feel. Now, there are quite a lot of people that I know that are hypersensitive, that feel offended, feel hurt, feel attacked for many, I say small or even not real reasons. That's a fact. It's like that. So, yes, in this psychodynamic point of view, if you feel bad, you feel hurt, you feel abused, then maybe it's just because you're oversensitive. Maybe you're experiencing abuse and you're being offended for things that don't really exist. You need to take it back within yourself. Now, I understand that as a therapist. We're not talking about that. I remember when I was living in Fintorn, back to Fintorn. I'll mention Fintorn again later. Living in Fintorn, and I was having a coffee with someone late at night, and somebody came in and said something that was unpleasant. And I said, hey, you can't say that. And she said, if you find it unpleasant, you find it problematical, it's your story, it's your problem, it's not mine. Well, I'm sorry. There are rather objective ways of looking at normal conversations, normal interactions, normal ways of dealing with things. And if you go beyond that, then it's not the person themselves that are too fragile and too projective. No, it's you. You've done harm, you've said something or done something you shouldn't. And many people in the world now seem to feel that they're empowered, they're enabled, they do what they want. Because land of freedom, America and so many other places, I can do this, I can do that. If you don't like it, it's your problem. Well, no, not from this point of view. Not from the question of pardon. Because if you've done something that somehow entered into someone else's territory and you have hurt them in some way, then it's for you to ask for pardon, not for them to pardon you because it's part of their own internal process. I don't agree with that. So, I'm sorry, psychodynamic, psychoanalytical point of view has never been my thing. I don't agree with it. So, let's go to the spiritual and the philosophical interpretations. Sure, many spiritual teachings represent forgiveness as a way to free oneself from being imprisoned by the past bitterness, anger, and resentment, thus helping spiritual growth and peace. Now, I agree with that. I agree. If you can release yourself from the pain and suffering of the events of the past, you will feel much better. And the idea that if you forgive someone for it, then it will release it. It's quite a nice system. It's unilateral. You don't have to see the person doesn't have to see you, don't have to interact. Nothing has to pass between you, and all of a sudden the table is cleared and everything's rosy. If it could only be that way, if that was only truth. People don't function that way. It might be a higher precept of spirituality, but real human beings can't do it. They're not that evolved, and for the person that's abused them, they're not evolving at all. And it says that in some traditions, forgiveness is treated as a moral virtue, part of character formation. Sorry, don't go there. You're not helping anybody by forgiving an abuser like that. You're not helping anybody. Although there are critics that insist that either premature forgiveness, no, premature means you've not worked on it, you've not dealt with it, you're not ready for it, or this sort of universal concept from the moral pressure or silencing of legitimate anger. It's not healthy. So that I can definitely agree with. So, premature forgiveness, before you're ready, before you've processed it, if you can, if it's possible, if you find a way. It says forgiveness does not equal reconciliation. That's what I said before. So be clear. You forgive someone that doesn't like you, that wants to hurt you. All you do is give them more space to continue to abuse you. Emotional forgiveness versus decisional forgiveness. I've already spoken about that. If it's all in the mind and not in the heart, not in the soul, not in your emotions, it's only going to create an inner conflict. And that inner conflict is only going to make you feel worse than you were before. Contextual appropriateness. This is when harm is ongoing, when there's a power differential. In those situations, you can't forgive, you're going to get more and more abused. That's also part of the 4 steps to forgiveness. It takes into account that and individual differences. Everybody is different. There's no way you have a universal system that works for everybody. It's a total, complete utter nonsense. So there's that. Is there any more? It says there's limited empirical evidence that forgiveness actually makes you feel better. You know, it's a belief system. And many people choose to follow that belief system because it seems like the right thing to do. And it certainly does seem to be the right thing to do. But unfortunately, reality doesn't always follow these religious precepts. Now, while I was in Finton, come back to Finton, I came in contact with a concept, with a system, with a book called The Course of Miracles, which was created by some members of the Finton community in harmony with their spiritual values. And the concept is undoing guilt through forgiveness is central, allowing individuals to heal relationships by looking past the unreal and recognizing the divine in others. And it talks about the illusion of the ego. The Course identifies attachments to the physical world and the ego as illusions that creates suffering. Bullshit. Bullshit. There are real abuses. There are things that are wrong. There are people that attack us. We are victims in certain cases. Unless we learn to stop being victims or walk away from abusers, we're going to stay victims. We're going to stay unhappy. And by twisting ourselves in knots to forgive them only means that the abuse will continue. So, I promise you the 4 steps of pardon. It's difficult because it goes up a page. Unfortunately, the page is halfway what I'm trying to talk about, but we'll manage. So, what are the 4 steps to pardoning someone? You can pardon someone if they come to you and they follow the 4 or 5 steps. I realize it's actually a little bit 5 in those. The first one is an acceptance of the fault. Yes, I did it. It was me. Whether it was an accident, whether it was intentional, I meant to hurt you, didn't mean to hurt you, meant to hurt someone else. It doesn't matter. One accepts the fact it was them that did it. They did the act or didn't do the act or said the words or whatever. The second is the acceptance of hurt or damage. I have done you wrong. You have suffered because of what I've done. So not only do they accept that they did something, but they accept that it caused pain, suffering, loss, lack, something of that type. The third step is the apology. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry I did it. I'm sorry. It's quite basic. Now, the next step, 4th step now, is reparation. What can I do to make it up for you? How can I buy this back? How can I do this? How can I do the other? And it's very important that there is some sort of act, gesture, payment, punishment, something that rebalances the books. That the person that is meant to forgive, is meant to pardon, they say, okay, this person in some way has suffered to balance my suffering, or they make some effort to relieve my suffering in the present by doing something good for me, nice for me. And the final and 5th step, which is very important, is they promise not to repeat it. As much as they possibly can, they say, I will not repeat this, I will not do this again. And in those ways, you can forgive, you can pardon, because the other one has gone into a relationship with you for that. Now, if you pardon someone and you don't feel ready for it, you don't feel in harmony with it, you will suffer. And it's no good saying, well, if you don't pardon them, then you'll keep suffering because of thinking about this, because of going there. No, it doesn't work that way. No. You can get beyond it. You can get above it. You can say, it's in the past. It doesn't affect me anymore. I can let it go. I can throw my pain and suffering in the river and watch it leave. I can burn it. It can be gone. I can send the universe to punish the person that made me suffer. I can ask God to rebalance the books, the universal energy, the white light, my spiritual allies, my shamanic allies. You can send anybody that from your system of belief to right the wrong. If you feel the other person needs to be punished, then you send others, the invisibles, to punish them. And as long as you're satisfied with that, and now you can do a particular magic, shamanic, hypnotic induction for people to send back their pain and suffering to where it came from. That's fine. That's totally fine. For me, that's spiritual. If you give back something that is given you that you don't want, you can do that. I'm totally okay with that. So anyway, that's the end of this little discussion this evening. Hope you found it interesting. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. So today is Thursday, and I have a few evenings to do other things. And I'll meet you again next Monday. And I hope you continue with your challenge. I hope you're going forward. And I'll see you Monday. Bye for now. Oops. End stream.